Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. We know the world is a nightmarish dystopian hellscape ruled by Timu James Bond villains, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So I thought I'd put together 10 movies that'll give you a bit of comfort while we're surviving this nightmarish hellscape, because essentially that's what this channel does. Some of these movies are fairly easy to find, some of them are not easy to find. All of them are entertaining, you're going to have a good time with them. This one I picked up from 101 Films in the UK. It's a William Castle science fiction movie from the mid-1960s on Blu-ray. Stars Christopher George, Greta Baldwin, Henry Jones, Monty Markham, Harold Gould. Project X. This isn't the Project X about the big house party, the recent one. This is one about a guy called Hagen Arnold, who's a secret agent in the future, brought back from cryogenic suspension after surviving a plane crash during a mission, in order to uncover a secret germ formula that's been hidden away years earlier. As part of the plans for a complex scientific charade, the agent is convinced that he's a gangster living in the year 1968, because that makes it easier to film. But the vital memories are being suppressed, so the authorities use ultra-advanced technologies to uncover the secret. This is the first time this one's been on Blu-ray. Inside, you don't get too much else. There's a few special features there. But this one was a perennial on weekend television here in Australia at various times. And it's not too bad. Some of the special effects work, and this is a fairly low-budget movie. I think it may be a Columbia film. No, it's actually Paramount. Some of the flashback sequences are not done with standard models and actors and things like that. They're actually done by Hanna-Barbera's animation. And that makes it very, very weird. This movie is one of those odd B or C grade science fiction movies from the 1960s that you can't help but love. It's not groundbreaking in any way, but it has a certain kind of B-picture charm about it. And I enjoy rewatching it every now and then, which is why I bought the Blu-ray in the first place. This one came out in 2019, but it's still available around the place if you look around. And it's a bit of fun. I mean, if you like William Castle, you like William Castle. This one doesn't have William Castle announcing the film at the start of it, which I always found to be a dull thing in itself. I think it's self-promotion at the expense of the movie when William Castle did that. Nonetheless, this one doesn't have it. Yeah, it's got stiff actors in it like Christopher George and Monty Markham and Harold Gould and people like that. Apparently it was based on novels by Leslie P. Davis, about which I know nothing. But you should check this one out. When you're going through odd times, a little bit of B science fiction from the 1960s is what you need. Next one, I'm going to give you a 1980s French film based on an American novel. The novel set in Texas. The movie itself is set in West Africa in 1938. It's a little piece of kind of neo-noir in some ways, called Coup de Torchon, otherwise known as Clean Slate. It was directed by Bertrand Vernier. It stars Philippe Noiret, and it's about a policeman in colonial West Africa in 1938 who is kind of browbeaten by a whole bunch of people. There are a couple of pimps in town that he doesn't get on with. His wife is cucking him with another guy. He's kind of low rung and a little bit depressed. And then he breaks. And then he starts fighting back. First off, he kills the two pimps and throws their body into the river so the crocodiles get him. But then the twin brother of one of the pimps comes into town. He's got to deal with that. It's actually based on a novel from 1964 by Jim Thompson called Pop 1280, like Population 1280. And if you know Jim Thompson's crime novels, to set one in colonial West Africa in 1938 and transferring it from Texas to there is a bit of a bold move, but this movie is a real hidden gem. Yes, it is in French, but Philippe Noiret is really great as the cop, and they actually shot it on location in Africa. This was the first movie that I ever spoke about on the radio back when I was doing ABC local radio and regional radio movie reviews with my good friend Ivor Cole, rest in peace, back 15 years ago. And it was his suggestion to watch this. So Coup de Torchon, you should check out if you haven't already. Really great crime thriller, odd location, and it combines humor with horror and crime in a very interesting way. I watched it again yesterday, and yeah, it's still a marvelous film. And Philippe Noiret, who of course had been in previous things, he was in Le Grand Bouffe with Marcello Mastroianni and those guys, and Michel Piccoli back in the 1970s. But in this one, he is really good playing this downtrodden local constable, in a sense, who suddenly breaks and suddenly fights back against all the people who are oppressing him. You should check out Coup, Torchon. A lot of these films are from the 1960s for no really good reason. This one is a vulgar pleasure, and I say vulgar because it can be seen as a very facile movie in some ways, but it was incredibly popular. Directed by William Asher, music by Les Baxter. It's got a cameo by Vincent Price in it. Stars Robert Cummins, Dorothy Malone, Frankie Avalon, and Neff Funicello. It's Beach Party, the first of the Beach Party movies, where Robert Cummins plays a scientist who is studying the mating habits of teenagers in a beach community in the 1960s. His assistants played by Dorothy Malone. We've got Frankie Avalon and Neff Funicello playing the usual characters. You get Harvey Lembeck playing Eric Von Zipper, and Joel McRae's son Jody McRae's in it. A whole bunch of really cool people are in this film. Maury Amsterdam's in there as well. It's just one of those vulgar 1960s movies. I love the Beach Party movies. I don't have any other ones. If anybody sees any secondhand copies of the other Beach Party movies around and is feeling generous, you can sling it my way. These movies are a lot of fun. And there's A Ghost in the Invisible. There's Beach Blanket Bingo. They're just vulgar fun, and I enjoy them a lot. In fact, I enjoy them more than I enjoy things like Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine and Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs. These ones are just so much silly fun. Again, Saturday afternoon movie viewing. And I really enjoy them, and I can rewatch them every couple of years and just have a good time. Cinerama movie. I've got a Cinerama movie for you now. This one stars Lawrence Harvey, Claire Bloom, Carl Bohm, Walter Slezak, Oscar Homolka, Barbara Eden. The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. Now, the frame story about the two brothers, played by Lawrence Harvey and Carl Bohm, who was in Peeping Tom, by the way, is a bit naff, but the stories about the stories told by the Grimm brothers are a lot of fun. The fairy tales were directed by George Pal. The movie itself was directed by Henry Lewin. It's in Cinerama, so it looks really odd on the screen. And there's anybody at the center of the screen is like this, and anybody at the side of the screen is like this. But I love it, and I wanted to have a Cinerama movie in my collection. And this is the one that came up first. And the music too. Who did the music on this? Because I love the music. It says words and music by Bob Merrill. I like the music on this. Fantastic stuff. It has a cameo by Russ Tamblyn, making a reappearance as Tom Thumb from the movie Tom Thumb, which is one of my other favorite kids' movies of the time. Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm is just such a pleasure. A lot of it was shot on location in Europe, and it looks odd in that Cinerama aspect ratio, but it's also incredibly entertaining, and I love it. There's a dragon in it. There's Buddy Hackett playing a knight fighting the dragon. There's all sorts of weird. Who else is in here? Yvette Mimieux, of course, Russ Tamblyn, Jim Backus, Beulah Bondi, Terry Thomas, and Buddy Hackett. Inside you get the letterbox version, and you also get the smile box version, which is the one with the odd aspect ratio. There are the two discs in there. And you also get a booklet about it, Once Upon a Time, and background stories. It's almost like a umbrella release, this one. But I love The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. And I think I'm about due for a rewatch of this one. A joyous movie in so many ways. Very odd because of that Cinerama thing. But nonetheless, it is watchable. And it is of its time, of course, because it is a very early 1960s Cinerama movie. But it does have a certain whimsical charm about it. This one I've got next rental Blu-ray. It's like a third Escape From movie without Kurt Russell. There was Escape from New York, there was Escape from LA. And there was this weird Guy Pearce, Maggie Grace movie called Lockout, which is basically Snake Plissken in space. MS-1, an experimental prison in space, where the 500 most dangerous criminals on planet Earth are kept in an artificial sleep. Leading his humanitarian mission, the daughter of the US president, played by Maggie Grace, arrives on board the station just as an unprecedentedly violent mutiny breaks out. Emily and the crew of the MS-1 are taken hostage. President Warnock then decides to send Agent Snow, Guy Pearce, to MS-1 with the sole mission of saving Emily and no one else. It is Snake Plissken in space. Guy Pearce has spoken a bit pejoratively about this movie, but I like it. It's a lot of fun. It was produced by Luc Besson, who directed it. It says it was directed by Saint and Mather, whatever that means. I can look it up later, or you can look it up yourself. But this one's a kind of vulgar pleasure. It's unashamedly not a rip-off, but an homage to John Carpenter and Kurt Russell and the Snake Plissken movies. A lot of fun. The special effects works pretty damn good in it. I like this one, and I like it more than I expected to like it. It's a vulgar pleasure, let's say. And if you're in the mood for a kick-ass action film, you could do worse than this. Speaking of kick-ass action films, this one may be a little hard to find. Who released this? Madman released this one about 20 years ago. An Australian low-budget action film starring Stan the Man Longanides, who was an MMA fighter of some renown a quarter of a century ago. Trojan Warrior, set here in Melbourne, shot on the streets of Footscray and other places. It has a whole bunch of cameos by people like Mark Chopper Reed. If you've seen the movie Chopper with Eric Bana, the guy that movie's about, is in this movie very briefly. A guy called Ajax, who's a kind of local hero, who has a dodgy brother called Theo, played by Arthur Angel, who gets in trouble with the mob, and his brother Ajax, who is like a killer martial arts fighter, has to take care of him. It's got all the usual things you get in these kind of low-budget Australian movies of a certain era. Lots of nudity, lots of local references and local celebrities turning up in the movie. It's just such low fun. It's a grindhouse movie made at the turn of the 21st century. It'd be nice if someone like Umbrella did a re-release on this. I think it would be fun if you can get the rights to it. But Trojan Warrior actually worked with a guy who was one of the extras in this film. Whose name, oddly enough, was Angel. Little short guy, very muscular and tattooed everywhere. And every time I watch this movie, I see my old workmate Angel in the film. There's a few extras in there. It's got a few other people who are fairly well known in there, locally at least. People like Mark Jacko Jackson and John Brumpton, a character actor who turns up in low-budget Australian films and has done for a quarter of a century. Harry Mars, who is the singer from a really cool band of the late 20th century called Bachelors from Prague. You can consider this Ozploitation, but it's very late era Ozploitation. And it is a lot of fun. I think it'd be nice if it got a Blu-ray release, but if you hunt around, say on eBay, you may well find a copy of Trojan Warrior, and you might just enjoy it if you watch it. I watch it every 3-4 years and just have a bit of fun with it. So that's 6 of the 10. We've got 4 left to do. I'll do the one that I don't have a physical copy of, but it's in the public domain. Oddly enough, the movie itself is in the public domain, but the music for the movie, made by Henry Mancini, is not in the public domain. And you're not allowed to use the music out of context of the movie. It's Charade from 1961, directed by Stanley Donen, starring Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant. Audrey Hepburn plays a woman called Regina, who is about to divorce her husband, but she comes home and the house is empty, and she finds out her husband has been thrown off a train and died. Meanwhile, a mysterious man called Peter Joshua meets her, and we know he's got a secret agenda, and she finds out from the local American embassy and the CIA agent that works there, played by Walter Matthau, that there's more to this than there was, and it becomes almost like a North by Northwest chase with Regina and Peter Joshua going up against some bad guys played by George Kennedy and James Coburn in a very early role. It's a beautiful film. It's got great dialogue. The chemistry between Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn is chef's kiss wonderful.
Do we know each other?
Why do you think we're going to?
I don't know. How would I know? because I already know an awful lot of people, and until one of them dies, I couldn't possibly meet anyone else.
And the music by Henry Mancini is terrific.
Here you are.
Where?
On the street where you live.
How about once more around the park?
How about getting out of here? Come on, child, out.
Do you know what's wrong with you?
No, what?
Nothing.
Now, this one was remade in 2002, and the remake is not good. It was called The Truth About Charlie, and it has Tadaway Newton playing the Audrey Hepburn role, which wasn't a bad choice. But in the Cary Grant role, you got Mark Wahlberg, which is a bad choice, because Marky Mark has the charisma of a thumbprint. I watched that movie and I didn't enjoy it, and I had to go back and watch Charade afterwards to wash the memory of it out of my head. But Charade's a nice, comfortable 1960s comedy thriller with beautiful stars, beautiful locations around France. It starts out in the ski resorts and then moves to Paris. James Coburn's very creepy in it. George Kennedy's very creepy in it. George Kennedy, before he started doing a comb over, Walter Matthau playing the CIA agent is the kind of bureaucratic, nasty piece of work that we expect to see in this kind of movie, but it's a slightly different role for Walter Matthau. But Charade is wonderful. It's just such fun. It's a bit of fluff, but it's very, very, very entertaining fluff. Then we got one from a few years ago. A fairly small budget horror science fiction action film set during World War II and set on a B-17 bomber going on a mission in the Pacific. And it's called Shadow in the Cloud. Chloe Grace Moretz plays a woman who kind of smuggles herself onto this bomber, which is going on a special mission. And they travel towards the Pacific Islands from New Zealand, because the movie is actually a New Zealand film, and get attacked by gremlins. Not your little mogwai gremlins, but flying, nasty, sprite-like things with wings and teeth and claws. And the bomber is the location for all this action. And Chloe Grace Moretz is carrying something special in a kind of metal box that she has with her. And that becomes a definite part of the story and explains how fiercely her character fights to survive this situation. Fairly low budget, lots of special effects. I think Weta Workshop worked on it. But it is a kick-ass little action film and incredibly underrated, with a strong female character who is not tall and statuesque and dark-haired in this case, but is a woman of a smaller stature. And it's setting it during World War II just makes it that much more interesting. For me, this one's a hidden gem. Should be able to find it fairly easily if you look around. But it is kick-ass action all the way through. And it's an honest piece of work. So many movies like this are just there for the cash. But this one has a story to tell and a third act twist which really lands perfectly. And is not foreshadowed, but is contextualized by some of the things we see earlier in the film. That one you got to check out. Last two are from the 1960s, but they couldn't be more different. I wanted to chuck a musical in here. And I chose Bob Fosse's Sweet Charity, with Shirley MacLaine, Ricardo Montalban, John McMartin, Chita Rivera, Stubby Kaye. An adaptation of Fellini's Nights of Cabiria, but instead of sex workers, they're actually dance hall girls, because America does shit like that. Fantastic movie. This dance sequences are terrific. Set designs and production designs, and Shirley MacLaine's great in it. It just looks fantastic. There's tons of extras on this disc. This is an indicator release. Inside you get the same stuff. Incredibly popular movie at the time, but the dancing is what it's about, and the direction and just the way the story is told through that direction and through dance as much as anything else. And yes, the songs as well. Big spend is one of the things. There's a dance sequence called Rich Man's Frug, which is unlike anything you ever seen in cinema. Sweet Charity, I think, is incredibly underrated. It's really groovy. It's really of the 1960s. but it looks fantastic. And seeing it on Blu-ray, I first saw it, I think, on VHS, and I wasn't terribly impressed. It wasn't even widescreen VHS, it was pan and scan. But seeing it on Blu-ray and just enjoying Fosse's choreography as much as his direction made this one a really fantastic experience for me. The last one got a Dennis Hopper film from the 1960s. Directed by Curtis Harrington. Low budget movie with Linda Lawson, Luana Anders, Gavin Muir and Dennis Hopper. Night Tide. Night Tide, this one's again an indicator release, is a weird little black and white movie made on the Santa Monica Pier as much as anywhere else, about a sailor played by Dennis Hopper who's on leave and meets a woman who does a mermaid act on the fun pier at Santa Monica as a sideshow. And the woman, Maura, may or may not be a mermaid, and things start going wrong for the sailor. It's a beautifully shot black and white film, creepy in its own way, kind of hypnotic, almost a fairy tale in some ways. I'd heard about this for many years before I ever got to see it, but when I saw it, I understood it. And interestingly enough, this one was remastered and fixed up and restored by Nicholas Winding Refn, who was a big fan of the movie and paid for having the restoration done. But Night Tide you should check out if you haven't. It's spooky and weird, and one of those wonderfully unique films that were made on a low budget and often didn't get the releases in the cinemas that it needed to make money. But still, years later, people rediscovered the film and found out that it is something quite of itself and something that people at the time might have appreciated, but in retrospect, we seem to appreciate so much more. That one's enjoyable as hell. So that's what I got for you. 10 movies that will see you through odd times and odd things in the news and weird weather and all the other things that we're currently enduring. You need to have a break. You need to sit down, get a snack, get a bevy, and just enjoy some odd movies. And these 10 are the ones I've selected for this time around. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think of these 10 movies, or whether there are some that you would like to see but you haven't seen yet. Because I often get that as a comment that people are going to hunt down those movies, and I love it when that happens. You can also support this channel by becoming a channel member, or by donating through YouTube, or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next up, I've got Science Fiction Saturday, and I've got some groovy stuff for that. And on the other channel this week, I'm doing a travel vlog, because my other channel is a travel vlog channel, where I go on the longest local bus route in Melbourne and just show you what's on that bus route. I don't know whether that video is going to work, but it's going to be fun to record tomorrow. So until all of those things happen, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some horror movies and science fiction and crime movies and odd Australian films, and just enjoy yourself and give yourself a little break. And I'll catch you next time.